As they say on public radio, we're back. I'm talking with Dan Morgenstern, and we're going to talk about Mary Lou Williams.
Well, Mary was a fantastic musician and had a extraordinary career and influence on many people. And I feel closely connected to her for one reason. I did get to know Mary quite well, and also the Institute of Jazz Studies inherited her enormous collection. It's the biggest single collection at the Institute. She was a saver. She saved everything, and her career started really when she was about 16. She married very early. She married John Williams, who was a reed player, who incidentally was interesting in his own right. I only saw him once, but there was one of these jazz get-togethers. I think this one was in St. Louis, but I used to go to a lot of them, and he was on a panel, and he was about 90, but he had terrific recall, and really a very well-spoken man with great recall, and so it's a pity he didn't get more closely into me. But anyway, Mary was a saver. I mean, it's just to give you an example, when she was with Andy Kirk's band, of course she was the piano player, Andy's head arranger and really the musical director, and much more the leader of the band than Andy was, actually. But she also took care of all the stuff, as I learned from that collection, that there would be a piece of paper that she saved, she sent out the uniforms for cleaning and stuff. So there'd be a receipt from the cleaner. And when she had that great moment in her life, late in life, it was one of, because she became very religious. Actually, it was through what is now, sadly, the late Peter O'Brien, who was a very close friend of mine. And it was really through Peter that I got to know Mary well. The Jesuits, at one time when Mary converted to Catholicism, she stopped playing because she felt that the environment for jazz was sinful. And a very clever, Jesuits are known to be, they're the most intellectual among the various branches of Catholic Church. Told her that her talent was a gift from God and she should share it with people. So she went back to playing. But she would, when she had that, she did her mass at St. Patrick's, and that was a great moment in her life, especially in her late life. But in the collection, there is this thing that she kept, a notation for herself, where she puts down the cab fare to and from St. Patrick's and what she paid to have her hair done. So there are many elements of it, but needless to say, the most significant is the tons of music and all the various personal things. She had many fans. I'll give you two examples that stayed in my mind. One is that she had a photo of Curly of the Three Stooges with a cigar in his nose, and it's inscribed to Mary from Curly, okay? The other is Olivia de Havilland. Mary was in Paris for a while, and that's where Olivia lived for. She's still alive. She had her 100th birthday not very long ago. I sent her a birthday card. I got her address somehow in Paris. I never got a response. I fell in love with Olivia when I saw Robin Hood when I was 9 years old. But a lovely lady. But anyway, there was an inscribed photo to Mary Lou from Olivia de Havilland. So it was nice to see these things. An enormous collection with so many levels, layers to it. But Mary was an extraordinary woman. She's an extraordinary musician, and she lived on St. Nicholas Avenue. Her apartment, she had a very nice apartment, was kind of a, she invited musicians to come and see her, and she did little, there was a piano, there was some jam sessions. There's some great photographs. One person who was very friendly with her was Jack Teagarden. For some reason or other, they had a real friendship. Jack was into piano players. There's a Jack Teagarden session on HRS records, and I did the notes from a mosaic box of all the HRS stuff. So I looked at, there's a photo from a session there, the Ben Webster Jack Teagarden session, and there are people standing in the back, and because I knew him, I spotted Don Lambert. This Don Lambert, he was at the session, and Jack was a great fan of Lambert's, and actually, I think he attempted to get him the record date that he got for Bluebird, where he plays those
Anitra's Dance and things like that.
I think Teagarden was primarily responsible for getting him that session.
Wow. I want to say one more thing about Mary Lou, which is I've recently been going back to her solo and duo and trio recordings of the 30s, and she is so phenomenal because you could hear you can hear what's going to happen in jazz in her playing, you hear what has happened in jazz, and she's swinging ferociously.
She is amazing, wonderful pianist with a great touch and great harmonic sense and time. But she was also a great arranger. Of course, she's responsible for the success of the Andy Kirk Band, and there's so many lovely things. And there's one in particular, like, is a thing called Steppin' Pretty, which is a variation of Honeysuckle. It's got a beautiful reeds chorus. And, that was a great band. And she was very fond of, musically and personally, Dick Wilson, who was the tenor player. One of those guys who, like Herschel Evans, contemporary, died much too young. Wonderful player. He's not sufficiently well remembered at all. But she was Mary was somebody who liked to discover younger players and nurse them along. And when she got that fortunate gig at the Cookery, when Barney Josephson, who was the guy who had Cafe Society, where Mary was a fixture, reopened the place in the village, and that was the Cookery, and he brought Mary in there, and that was like a great thing for her because she hadn't been that busy at all. For a while she ran a thrift shop where she would get stuff from musicians, including, I went there a few times, a whole bunch of ties from Louis Armstrong and stuff from Duke Ellington and so on. Duke was extremely fond of her and also used her as an arranger. And this great piece called Trumpets No End, which is a Blue Skies variation features, that's Mary's.
Yeah.
That's Mary's arrangement. Her output was enormous, and at the Institute, the collection, there's a ton of music, some of which I don't think has ever been performed, and there are people who have looked into it, and she was just, and she started when she was 16, and like I said, she was a saver, so the things that there are scrapbooks that go all the way back to her marvelous. The whole thing it's a huge collection, and it's so deep.
Well, we need somebody to write and produce one of these beautiful books that used to be produced. There would be photographs and documentation, all that, like the books Rizzoli used to do.
Yeah, it should be done. I mean, I'm 87, I'm trying to write my memoirs. I don't have enough time to do these things, but somebody should do that. Because there's so much, there were a lot of people were in love with her. Ben Webster was in love with her. There's a homemade disc where Ben actually sings something for Mary. And there's a poem from Bud Powell, handwritten, he was in love with her too. So, you know, she was something special.
Well, thank you. We'll be back.